Welcome to Tuesday's edition of COVID-19. I'm Min San-hee. We are starting an hour later today in light of President Moon Jae-in's public address detailing Korea's New Deal, which aired at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon here. Now, we will get into details of that later on in the program, but first, here are the latest news related to the outbreak with our Kwon So-ah and Oh Jung-hee. So I hear Korea's daily number of infections has noted a decline. Please tell us more.
Yes, Sunny, we are seeing some relieving numbers when it comes to the new cases. Compared to yesterday, there has been a significant drop. So let's just get straight into the details. We have 33 new cases this Tuesday, bringing the total to 13,512. The death toll remains at 289, while 941 people are still being quarantined and 12,282 people have so far made a recovery, as 78 more people have been discharged from treatment or hospitals. So with that, we are back to the 30s here, but we had that surge yesterday to the 60s. And also there is a concern that the number of imported cases has been in the double digits for some time now, around 3 weeks. So where did those imported cases occur this Tuesday? For that, let's take a look at our map. We have 9 cases in Gyeonggi province, but 5 out of these were imported cases. And there was also one more in the city of Gwangju as well as Daejeon. But what is noticeable is that these 2 places were some places where there have been recent outbreaks of cluster infections, which means they did not have a single local infection this Tuesday. So that is good news there. Now let's move over to the global front. We have 1.3 million total cases, as some 200,000 cases have been added in the span of a day. Almost 4,000 people have lost their lives, bringing the death toll to 571,574, and almost 7.6 million people have recovered from COVID-19. And let's get a look at the details. So we have the U.S. with, again, some 65,000 new cases in a day, bringing the total to 3.47 million, followed by Brazil at more than 1.8 million. And India is expected to soon surpass the 1 million mark as well. And Russia is also seeing some 6,000 new cases on a daily basis now at 733,699. Let's move over to other places around the world. Mexico is still seeing a surging COVID-19 cases now at 304,435. And South Africa has reported more than 11,000 new cases in a day. That total standing at 287,796. And those were the figures I have for now. But our Oh Jung-hee will talk more about the virus spreading across the world and the containment measures. And I'll be back after the briefing. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, so thank you for that for now. Staying on the international front, according to the World Health Organization, the world set a new record this past Sunday with a daily tally of more than 230,000 confirmed cases. For more on the raging global pandemic, I have our Foreign Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee here in the studio. Welcome, Jung-hee.
Good afternoon.
Now, leaders of the US and the UK are now underscoring the importance of face masks, and President Trump was seen wearing one this past weekend.
Right, Sunny. Trump was actually heading to a military medical facility where he was to meet with wounded soldiers and frontline medical workers. He had previously refused to wear a mask in public, saying it was his personal choice. But that day, he actually appeared with one. And you know, we have to remember before that he actually had said that he would wear one if he were to be in a crowd and cannot keep distance from others. This is actually what he said to reporters on the day. Take a look.
I think when you're in a hospital, especially in that particular setting where you're talking to a lot of soldiers and people that in some cases just got off the operating tables, I think it's a great thing to wear a mask.
Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson also urged people to wear masks in confined settings. He said the UK government will announce in the next few days about what tools of enforcement would be used. Take a listen.
I do think that in shops, it is very important to wear a face covering if you're going to be in a confined space and you want us to protect other people and to receive protection in turn. Yes, face coverings, I think people should be wearing in shops. And in terms of how we do that, whether we make it mandatory or not, we'll be looking at the guidance. We'll be saying a little bit more in the next few days.
Right. Meanwhile, a fresh wave of infections in neighboring Japan is raising much alarm as the country has been reporting over 350 confirmed cases on a daily basis over the past few days, Chang-yi.
Yes, the virus is rapidly spreading once again in Japan, centering around the capital Tokyo area. And the situation is quite worrisome because the latest outbreak in Japan, in Tokyo actually, is more serious than what it was compared to how it was under a state of emergency. Mind you, Japan lifted its state of emergency on May 25th. About 75% of the new cases are people in their 20s and 30s. But Japanese authorities are reluctant to suspend businesses or return to a state of emergency, fearing further economic fallout. Take a listen to what Tokyo's governor had to say.
At present, a tough situation continues, but by confirming positive cases and taking proper responses in Tokyo, I want to both decrease the number of infections and advance social and economic activity.
Now, on a cautiously brighter note, Chang-yi, I understand that 3 countries in Southeast Asia have not seen any additional cases for the past 3 months. Tell us more.
Right, those 3 countries are Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, and they all share a border. According to their official government tallies, Vietnam has not seen any cases of local infection since April 16th, and Cambodia since April 12th. By this, I mean that these countries could have seen imported cases, but none via community infection. Laos has not seen any new cases since April 12th. The Lao government officially declared victory against COVID-19 last month. While Cambodia has reopened its border with Vietnam, Vietnam did not take a reciprocal measure. Laos says it'll keep its border shut. Though these countries have succeeded curbing the outbreak, they're firm that people-to-people exchanges won't happen for the time being.
And it appears that this sentiment is being shared by quite a number of countries.
Yes, Tani. One example is Italy. The country had declared a 6-month state of emergency at the end of January, but Italy's prime minister has recently hinted that it could be extending beyond, the state of emergency could be extended beyond the current deadline of July 31st because, quote, conditions exist to extend it. Plus, as coronavirus cases spike, Spain plans to put more regions under a lockdown. In Israel, lockdowns came into effect last week in neighborhoods across 5 towns and cities hit hard by the coronavirus. Entries and exits are restricted, as well as traffic and business activities. These are only a few examples of countries considering lockdowns. Many more countries around the world are struggling to keep the coronavirus under control and are mulling a return to lockdowns.
I see. All right, Chang-yi, I suppose lockdowns are viable options for countries seeing an overwhelming cases of COVID-19. Thank you for that international coverage. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Right, we turn now to the regular government briefing on COVID-19. The briefing itself took place a little after 2 o'clock in the afternoon as usual, and we took the liberty of recording it then to bring it to you now.
First, here is Deputy Director Kwon Junuk with the briefing.
Let us now begin our regular briefing for July 14th on the COVID-19 response.
We had 14 new local infections. And combined with imported cases, the total number of confirmed cases now stands at 13,512. A total of 78 more people have been discharged, and 941 people are still in quarantine undergoing treatment. We had no additional fatality as of yesterday. And here are some updates on our regional transmissions. First, in the city of Seoul Gwanakgu district at an office. In relation to this, we have found an index case on July 12th, and we have 8 additional cases. And at a Gangnam-gu district Yeoksangdong building, we also have the first case of index case being confirmed at the 2nd of July, and we have a total of 8 confirmed cases with 7 more additional cases. And in relation to a telecommunications education company in Seoul Gangnam-gu district. We also have 4 additional cases, and we have a total of 5 people being confirmed to date. And moving on to the Gyeonggi-do province, and in relation to a family residing in Gyeonggi-do province, Suwon City, Yeongtong-gu district, we have 1 more person of the family being confirmed, and a total of 7 people have been confirmed to date. And in relation to a door-to-door sales at Gwangju City, we have 1 additional case, and the total number of confirmed cases now stands at 141 for this case. And here are some updates on the imported cases today. Yesterday, we had a total of 19 new imported cases yesterday. And at the points of entry, 12 of them have been reported. And also, the rest of the 7 have been reported while on self-quarantine within the communities. And out of the 19 new imported cases yesterday, the countries, as for the countries, 4 of them from Americas, 3 from the USA, and 4 from Africa, and 11 from Asia, excluding China, and of 11, 5 of them were from Kazakhstan, 2 from Uzbekistan. However, in this number, we did not have enclosed in this number, we also had a ship that has been embarked in the port of Busan. And in the course of offloading quarantine investigation, we also have 1 additional confirmation of a Russian sailor, and we're conducting our contact tracing behind this case. And the KCDC, we continue to witness the COVID-19 global trend. We continue to analyze the trend, and we will also exert our full efforts to curb the further spread of the COVID-19 through the imported cases. And looking at these imported cases, most of the continents over the globe, we are seeing an increase of the confirmed cases, especially in the Central Latin America as well as North America, and followed by Asia. And by nation, during the past 2 weeks, for every 100,000 people, those countries with over 120 confirmed cases have been numbering around 11, and it's continued to increase. And in the U.S., we have seen a daily increase of over 50,000 new confirmed cases, and it's rewriting its records. And in our neighboring Japan, we also have seen 200 cases on a daily basis for the past few days, and we are seeing increase of the cluster infection, especially centering around young people. And therefore, in order to curb the influx of these imported cases to South Korea, we have been continuously doing our analysis of the infectious risk rates of our other countries, and we also have put in place a restriction on the issuance of a visa, as well as decreasing the capacity of the passenger flights by 60%. And as for people leaving the country for these high-risk countries, we have been placing a re-entry ban. And as for yesterday, starting from yesterday, all of the foreign entrants coming from these high-risk countries, they are mandatory to submit a document that proves that they have tested negative in the PCR tests that have been carried out 48 hours within their entry into the country. And all of these testings need to be carried out by a medical institution that needs to be credited by our diplomatic missions overseas. And as for the countries with higher risks, we will also mull the conditions and possibility of decreasing the number of irregular flights as well. Next are some updates on our R&D on the vaccine and treatment. And as for the COVID-19 plasma therapy, 15 more people have also participated in the donations for their plasma samples, and a total of 390 people also showed their intentions. And actually 182 people have donated their samples. And centering around Daegu, we are also seeing more people donating their blood plasma samples. And these specific numbers will be updated in the future. And my thanks goes to all of the people who have been participating in this donation, and also those who have showed their intentions to do so. And currently, as for the remdesivir, around 24 medical hospitals nationwide, they have been administered to about 49, all of the 49 patients with severe conditions. And last but not least, I have a message about the distancing measures for the public. Looking at the latest outbreak, most of the regional cases have been taking place in door-to-door sales facilities, as well as multi-use facilities and the religious small group meetings, as well as social gatherings, education facilities, and nursing hospitals as well. And this calls for our precautions. And in the same time, during the monsoon season, we also believe that we will have greater damages, and also we need to take special alert for the waterborne diseases as well as infectious diseases that are transmitted through mosquitoes and skin infections. And during the monsoon season, we also would like to highlight that you could be prone to the EPEC or other infectious diseases that can spread through waterborne diseases or food. And also with a higher number of puddles, we will also see an increase in the number of mosquitoes, and we will also see a more increase of the diseases transmitted through these mosquitoes, including the malaria in the northern part of Gyeonggi-do province. We ask you to cook food well before you consume them, and also self-quarantine measures, including washing of your hands, is ever more important. And also centering around these diseases, these areas with higher great risks of damages of the rain, we will also exert our full efforts for quarantine. And as for COVID-19, when we look at our domestic cases, thanks to the efforts put forth by the local governments, as well as the epidemiological investigators who are actually doing the tracing very well, we have been exerting our full efforts to curb the further spread of the virus throughout our community. And every single of our members of the public have participated in the social distancing measures very proactively, and they have been also wearing face masks at all times and also complying well by the self-quarantine and the self-sanitizing measures. However, the situations are very different in other countries. The global COVID-19 conditions are exacerbating. As we mentioned during our briefing, if you look at countries like the US and Japan, we see a resurgence of the outbreak, and in India as well as the Central and Latin America, we also see a higher speed of the infections. And no one can expect the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is a very big global crisis. And just a few months back, some of the nations that have gone through the pandemic, as well as the other countries that have been in a similar state with South Korea, have been easing their lockdowns and opening up their borders again. And they are also transitioning into the recovery of their economy and going back to their routine daily lives. There were differences in terms of speed and intensity. However, most countries eased their lockdowns, and also they carried out eased measures for social distancing. However, there are also differing results in many countries and many regions, and this shows that it is very difficult to curb the virus to its full extent. And it is very not timely right now to expect and to forecast a vaccine that we did not even develop as of yet. And the only effective method to protect ourselves is to keep healthy distance and wear face masks, and also abide by individual sanitization measures. And as we learn more about the COVID-19, the Korean KCDC, we believe that we also know that there is no grand measure to win against the virus. Ultimately, the virus also calls for the only measures to live with the virus. New norms, in which is all about social distancing and wearing face masks, is becoming a new etiquette and is becoming our new norms. And in this background, there is no expectations of who and which country will be able to adapt to its full extent. And we believe that this will determine the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. We do not have any other alternatives, and thanks to the great and swift adaptive capability of our people, we believe that we can overcome the virus at a fast pace. Thank you very much.
Right, that was Kwon Junuk, the Vice Head of KCDC, with Tuesday's afternoon briefing. So let's begin, that is, with his remarks on the rising imported cases here in Korea.
Yes, it looks like today's briefing kind of coincides a lot with what Jung-hee talked about before, the increasing cases abroad, because the government actually made an assessment of these global cases as, according to Kwon, Latin America, North America, and Asia, in that order, the cases are still surging, and that's why we are also seeing an increase in imported cases here in the country. And those today were reported from the Americas, from Africa and Asia. And there was also one case that was not yet added to those 19 cases, which is related to a Russian sailor that probably we'll have more information about on tomorrow. Meanwhile, he also mentioned how neighboring Japan is seeing new rises in cases, and also how the US is seeing more than 50,000 cases on a daily basis. And that is actually why the government implemented stronger quarantine measures at the airport and seaport, which actually started to be in effect starting yesterday. And he also mentioned that we are now in the monsoon season, and this is why flooding and related diseases can lead to more consequences. So along with COVID-19 quarantine measures, we will have to be careful of our hygienes. And he also had an important note to the nation's people. He said it's too early to rely on a vaccine that does not yet exist. And that is why quarantine measures such as social distancing, wearing masks, and also self-hygiene measures is what can be a decisive factor in whether the virus can be contained or not.
Right, definitely an emphasis on the preventative measures that we can take. All right, so thank you for that. We'll see you again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
There is one continent that remains untouched, largely by COVID-19. The Antarctica is a sparsely populated landmass, except for a few dozen research stations operated by a number of countries, including Korea. For more on life there amid the pandemic elsewhere, I have Song Jun-young, a researcher at Jang Bogo Station in Antarctica, live on the line. Hello, Mr. Song.
Hi, nice to meet you.
It's good to meet you too, Mr. Song. It's summer here in Korea with temperatures hovering above 30 degrees Celsius. What is the climate like there?
The time of Jang Bogo Station is 4 hours faster than that of Korea. So now it's 7:30 p.m. The temperature is minus 20 degrees Celsius and wind is 10 meters per second now. It is winter season here, which is same as December in Korea. And since Jang Bogo Station is placed near the South Pole, there is no sunlight for 2 months. Since everything outside is dark, we can see aurora and some stars in any time.
Mr. Song, for the sake of our viewers, could you tell us a bit about Jang Bogo Station and the research you're involved with, and what your daily routine is like?
Okay. Due to limitation of research in King Sejong Station, Jang Bogo Station was constructed relatively near the South Pole and opened in 2014 as Korea's second Antarctic base. A variety of research such as atmospheric science, space science, geophysics, and life science is conducting at the station in winter as well as in summer. About 80 people stayed in summer and 18 people stay in winter. So 18 people in overwintering team are conducting their work for a year, divided into 3 groups that are general affairs, research, and maintenance.
Mr. Song, in your view, how has Antarctica managed to remain free of COVID-19 thus far?
We came here last November, and summer research parties came into the station from late October to early December of the last year, when COVID-19 was not serious. So there were no chances that infected people came and stayed at the station.
And regardless of that reality, I understand you have been taking necessary precautions to keep safe from possible infection, though.
Yes. At the moment, we are the only people, and there will be no people coming to the station before we leave. In December, the next overwintering team will come to the station to take over. Usually, the overwintering team comes here by airplane, and it takes 4 days from Korea to Jang Bogo Station. But this time, the next overwintering team comes to the station by our own, the Korean icebreaker. It takes about a month. before they get on board, they are also isolated for 2 weeks and diagnosed with coronavirus twice. That means that we will ensure coronavirus-free people to come to the station.
Mr. Song, one final question. It must be so tough to be stationed in a place so remote from home. What are some of the challenges you face while working there?
It's nothing compared to the hardships of those who suffer from coronavirus in worldwide. But we have a longing for family members and lethargy from not seeing the sun and sleep rhythm disruption. But we have facilities for hobbies such as library, screen golf, billiard, music instruments, and karaoke machine. Also, chef makes some delicious food for us in every day, so we can get rid of stresses and wisely overcoming these hardships.
I see. Well, my compliments to your chef, Mr. Song. Thank you very much for making the time to join us live at this hour with your thoughts.
Thank you. It is a great honor to be invited on this session.
Now, starting yesterday, that is July 13th, those entering Korea through its seaports are subject to 14 days of self-quarantine, as is the case for those entering the country through its airports. In this next video, we walk you through, or we seek, that is, to answer inquiries that you may have regarding the mandatory isolation and the regulations pertaining to it to better contain COVID-19.
무증상 감염도 있으니까 어떤 기준으로 자가격리자가 되는 건지 좀 궁금하긴 해요.
예를 들어서 가족이 확진 판정을 받았는데 집안에서 생활하려면 화장실을 같이 써야 되는데 그럴 땐 어떻게 해야 되는지 그것도 되게 궁금해요.
Many questions are streaming in from a curious public on the exact rules of quarantine, what people must do upon entering Korea, and how family members can cooperate.
자가격리 대상자는 해외 입국자와 확진자의 가족 및 확진자와 같은 장소를 이용하신 분들인데요. 해외 입국자분들은 대중교통을 이용하실 수가 없습니다. 공항에 비치된 특별수송 리무진 버스 또는 특별수송 택시를 이용하여 보건소에 오고 보건소에서 검사 후 자택까지 이송해드리고 있습니다.
2 weeks in self-isolation is mandatory for everyone entering the country from overseas, but there are exceptions. These include officials on a diplomatic mission, such as U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Stephen Biegun, who visited Korea last week, as well as Lee Do-hun, the Korean Foreign Ministry's Special Representative on Peace and Security Affairs. Those traveling on special A1 and A2 visas to conduct state affairs are exempt from quarantine. The government also provides bereavement exemptions to those entering Korea to attend a funeral for one of their family members. Recently, Samsung Group Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong wrapped up a business trip to China with minimum fuss, piquing public curiosity. It's been revealed that he was granted a special waiver for business travelers as part of an agreement struck between Korea and China. Many countries abroad are also providing special quarantine exemptions for travelers. The UK, for one, has decided to grant waivers for travelers from 59 countries, Korea included. Elsewhere, Cambodia is also considering quarantine exemptions for foreign investors and business travelers. For Korea, only those who have tested negative for COVID-19 prior to entering the country are eligible for quarantine exemptions. For others, they must keep themselves in self-isolation for 2 weeks following their entry into Korea. For those in self-quarantine who live with their family members, they must eat alone and disinfect common use areas and surfaces.
집 앞에 잠깐 나가시는 거는 괜찮다고 생각하셔서 쓰레기를 버리러 나가시거나 시장을 보시는 일 등 이런 일들이 자주 있습니다. 이런 경우에도 자가격리 위반이십니다.
There have been instances where those subject to self-isolation have broken quarantine rules, which carries many legal consequences, such as the mandatory wearing of electronic wristbands to monitor their movement.
관련법이 개정이 지난 4월에 됐고요. 실제로 20대 한 남성 같은 경우에는 자가격리 대상자였는데 2차례나 그 수칙을 위반하고 이제 무단으로 이탈을 하게 됐습니다. 그래서 법원이 이 부분에 대해서 1심이 징역형을, 그러니까 징역 4개월을 선고한 전례도 있고요.
Spending 2 weeks in isolation can be a difficult ordeal, but it is a sacrifice that one must go through in order to ensure the safety of him or herself, as well as others around them.
The pandemic is accelerating.
한국판 유지를 국가 발전 전략으로 삼아 정부의 역할과 책임을 힘있게 실천하겠습니다.
Earlier today, President Moon Jae-in disclosed details of his vision of Korea's New Deal aimed at easing the economic fallout from the pandemic. In today's studio session, we walk through this ambitious plan with Professor Kim Se-wan from Ewha Women's University. Welcome, Professor Kim.
Good afternoon.
And Professor Song Soo-young from Chungang University. Welcome back, Professor Song.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me again.
Professor Kim, let's begin with your overall impression of today's public address by the President regarding Korea's New Deal.
Well, actually, Hyundai Motor and Naver's voluntary participation on Korean New Deal has a symbolic meaning because the former is largest employer of Korea and the latter represents fourth wave industrial revolution of Korea. Hopefully, Korean New Deal plan goes well, successfully, and that's going to be a great chance for upgrading Korean economic structure and at the same time overcoming coronavirus pandemic shocks.
Right. What, Professor Song, are your thoughts on this event today?
Yeah, this reminds me of the moment in 1938. In Sweden, the Saltsjöbaden agreement has been successfully signed both parties by the employers' representative and the employees, workers in Sweden. That has a really long-lasting effect on the Swedish economy. In 2019, there was a commemorative conference was held in Sweden. So this would be, I think, the starting point, our economy to be built upon this agreement between the employees and the employers. Otherwise, the economy cannot be sustained in the future under the pandemic coronavirus situation.
Professor Kim, President Moon Jae-in is also poised to hold strategic sessions to monitor progress on the New Deal once or twice every month, he says. Do you believe this kind of personal commitment to this project will add fresh momentum to it?
Of course, if President Moon presides over Korean New Deal strategy meeting on regular basis, like once in a month or two, it's going to be the most efficient vehicle to deliver a best result. Actually, that reminds me, President Park Chung-hee's presides over Economic Development Strategy Committee in 1960s. We remember that his committee, Economic Development Committee, was very successful in implementing government plans for developing economy.
Right. Professor Sung, going back to the New Deal, of course, could we talk a bit about the timing of this project? Why is this project being pursued now?
Yeah, because previously the original some economic plan under the Korean New Deal, whose two pillars consisted with the Digital New Deal and the Green New Deal. Originally, and academically, the Green New Deal could have a much large impact and a positive impact on the employment in the future, because even with the help of the AI and the robot, still we need so many jobs should be executed and carried out by the human being, particularly in pursuit of the Green New Deal. That's why Green New Deal could have some positive, larger impact on the employment. But however, Today, I have seen that the government would like to focus on some impact and expand the employment effect on the digital New Deal. But I'm a little bit suspicious of its impact. However, as long as some infrastructure and digitalization successfully implemented in the Korean economy as infrastructure and as a social overhead capital, then based upon that, the private sector could flourish. Then it could have some, well, hopefully at least, could have some positive impact employment. That's why they have changed some future prospect about the Korean New Deal.
The New Deal right now seeks to establish more than 500,000 jobs by the year 2025, right? I see. Professor Kim, why do you suppose, in your opinion, is the project being pursued now? Do you see a correlation between the pandemic and perhaps efforts to ensure a more sustainable economic growth?
Yes, COVID-19 is changing every platform of business in global economy today because it is enforcing people to stay away almost forever these days. So particularly in service industries, it is very important reshuffling all business platform in terms of online situation. And same story goes to more environment-friendly business platform. We can't produce carbon dioxide at current pace anymore because of its negative effects on global weather and so on. So it is necessary to reshuffle all business platform for more environment-friendly style.
Right. Professor Song, the government has also unveiled intentions to strengthen safety nets to deal with the immediate economic fallout from the pandemic. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, actually, they have emphasized the role of some social security insurance and unemployment benefit. However, at this moment, I would like to emphasize the job guarantee is really in need because it could have a much more positive effect than the unemployment benefit. Basically, currently, the monetary policy could have provided larger liquidity to the market. However, that could end up with the hands of the asset holders who has less tendency to consume. As a result, recently I have seen that the consumption coupon has been provided to the consumer that would have a much more larger multiplier impact, even though the size is very small. To that regard, I think currently the government rather focus on some unemployment benefit that is a direct support for the people. But however, job guarantee is another dimension that should be included in the further as a foundation to support the Korean New Deal, Digital New Deal, and the Green New Deal, particularly for the Digital New Deal. That adoption of the AI and robot necessarily reduce some part of the jobs in some economy. Therefore, to that regard, I would like to say that job guarantee program, public employment program, which has been implemented in the U.S. in 1930s even, and so that has not been mentioned as far as I know today. Today's broadcasting, but that is some necessary part to be addressed in the future.
And speaking of the America in the 1930s, Professor Kim, Korea's New Deal got its namesake from the original New Deal launched by former US President Franklin Roosevelt during the Great Depression of the 1930s. Do you believe the Moon administration had a particular reason for choosing this moniker?
Well, I think President Moon's Korean New Deal plan has two ultimate policy purposes. The first is providing a fiscal stimulus package for securing employment and economic activities. And the second is reconstructing Korean economic structure from manufacturing-oriented economy to service and high-tech-oriented economy. And also it should be pointed out that the original New Deal of President Roosevelt of the United States has a clear and significant signal to to improve the low-income people's life quality than that of the high-income people. I think that political philosophy is shared by President Moon today.
Right. Professor Song, the shift towards a digital economy and eco-friendly growth is not being pursued just by Korea. It's being pursued by quite a number of its global counterparts. What makes Korea's initiative perhaps more unique, or is there something that makes it more unique compared to its global counterparts?
In the global counterparts, actually the fiscal stimulus package around the globe, around the world, is much larger than Korea. So I think what is unique in Korea is in terms of the percentage of the fiscal stimulus package, in terms of some percentage of the share of GDP, Korea is very low. So which means that, for example, Japan has a 21% of, so what I'm saying is the budget already passed the National Assembly. But in the United States was 12%. But Korea, according to my calculation, in 2019, GDP was almost 2,000 trillion Korean won. And then currently, the budget which has passed as a fiscal stimulus package is only almost 75, or even today it will be increased at 100, but that is only accounts for just 4 or 5% of the GDP. To that regard, still we have still more room to pursue the fiscal expansion and to promote and to support the economy. And Professor Kim tells earlier, just a moment ago, tells that the Strategic Council of the Economy, which was broadcast today, that reminds me actually in 1933, in the Franklin Roosevelt has made some radio broadcast to the American people. That is called like some dialogue beside some furnace. So that is actually the economist, the Yale University economist Robert Shiller has mentioned that that works very positively because that delivers some positive psychological relief to the people who have suffered so much from the outbreak of the Great Depression. So the same could be the case. So I think the strategic headquarters or strategic economic council works as some kind of I hope it brought some relief to the people. Okay, at least the government is very concerned about economic situation. They do not remain the hands put together and then wait until the market comes to recover the economy. But so to that regard, I think at least the psychological positive aspect has been delivered to the people.
To the public, of course. Professor Kim, Korea's New Deal is a long-term project, of course. In your opinion, Professor, when will we start to see fruit from this initiative?
Well, in providing more employment and higher income, it will give a quick result because government will spend lots of money in investing infrastructures, and that will generate 100,000 of jobs sooner or later. However, in reconstructing Korean economic structure, it's going to take longer than expected because there are lots of adjustment efforts to new technologies and new system. For example, Kim Dae-jung president invested big money in high-speed internet in early 2000s, but we are benefited from that infrastructure after, say, 2010. So it's going to take longer than expected.
So we'll have to be patient.
Right.
Professor Song, the Bank of Korea earlier in May slashed its benchmark interest rate to a record low of 0.5%. It's poised to hold a meeting again this Thursday. Are we expecting, or are you expecting, a further slash?
Yeah, currently in the United States, the federal funds rate is accommodated between 0% to 0.25%. So, which means our basic interest rate is 0.5%, which is quite higher than US. Now, look at the economic situation. In the United States, the economic prospect is really worse than us, definitely, because of the degree of the expansion and pandemic and the COVID-19. that would have a much more devastating effect on the U.S. economy. To that regard, we still have a room to decrease the interest rate. But however, we must be cautious that that's going to end up with those liquidity which was provided by lowering the interest rate could be put in the hands of the asset holder. That's why we have witnessed some kind of uprising of the stock market and the real estate market. So I hope the government should be prepared for not only put the pressure on the real estate market and then the stock capital market to go into some bubble situation. That would be very bad. So considering that situation, that's why I emphasize that the fiscal stimulus is much more in need, and the job guarantee or public job employment program would be more beneficial to the economy.
Right, and hopefully the government will heed your words. All right, Professor Song, thank you very much for your thoughts, and Professor Kim, as always, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we end the program on that note. Tomorrow, we touch upon the impact of the new normal that is, on the communities here and elsewhere around the world. In the meantime, Arirang TV welcomes your thoughts and inquiries on our social media accounts or homepage, arirang.com. Thank you for watching.